It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
All right, here. This next question, Brian, is from Ben T, and this is an interesting one. He used how. I think he meant what's, so I'm going to change that. What's an acceptable amount of debt to take on? Dave Ramsey always says 0%, but that seems extreme. I've been trying to keep it below 50% of my total asset worth. Is that a safe margin? I don't know exactly how Ben asked that question, but I thought perhaps it'd be valuable if we talk about when you do take on debt, what are some things to keep in mind, right? Like, so first of all, is just as a yes or no question, is 0% debt always the answer? You can never have debt. Yes or no? Yes or no question?
It's no.
No, right? So if you are going to have debt, what kind of debts are acceptable? And then can you give us some parameters around that, like mortgage and credit cards and automobiles and student loans? Like, when does debt make sense? When does debt not make sense?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we give some really good guidelines. Let me get some basic life stuff out here, because these are the big life decisions where debt comes into play. Cars, that's the first thing. You graduate college, you need a car, trade school, whatever you're graduating from. You need to buy some reliable transportation. We don't let you buy luxury brands unless you can do same as cash. So if you're just looking at basic reliable transportation, I am okay with you financing, but you better be following 23-8, meaning that you better put down 20%. You don't finance it for longer than 3 years, and then the debt service can't be greater than 8% of your gross income as a household. So that's the first thing. Remember, earmark 8%. That's the first thing. Now let's talk about housing. We don't like housing, and look, this is hard. And this is why it's going to come into play, because we're in a strange market right now where even rents are going up. So in the past, I've always talked about, I don't want you to have your housing costs take more than 25% of your income. I know that that's harder now with current conditions going on, that number might naturally get pushed up to 30 or even beyond. So you better make sure you're making that up. So then that defaults to this overall rule of how much debt is okay. And I don't want you to be so debt full that you can't save money, you can't live life, because the decades will move quick. So you better be making sure you're leaving enough margin, not only for saving and investing for the future, but also just to live your life. And if all that is covered by debt, then you're in a lot of trouble. So I don't like your total debt load to really exceed about 35% of your gross income. And you're probably like, wait a minute, you left out a few things. You left out credit cards. Well, remember, credit cards you're paying off same as cash. They need to be disappearing. And then student loans, this is one. Guys, I'm not going, because this is not the time or place with this question, but education debt, in the past, we put mortgage debt and education debt in the positive, good column of debt. I think you have to be very careful with education debt right now, because there's a lot of blowback, because there's a lot of majors and other things that just don't pay themselves back the way they should. So I would encourage you, know if you're going to do debt, what's the incremental benefit this is going to create for your life? Like if you're going to school to become an engineer or an accountant, and okay, my first year salary will be this at graduation, then okay, your debt should not exceed that first year's salary. But if you're going to college and the incremental cost is to go get into education or other things, don't go run up 6 figures of student loan debt for something that pays you $40,000 right out of college. You're creating an upside down situation. So I don't know if I covered enough. No, that was great.
Can I ask you one other bolt-on question on this?
Yeah.
What about other types of debt? Like if you want to go buy, I'm going to say a second home or a rental property or an investment like that requires debt. At what stage or where in the financial order of operations does that fall? Like, how do I know, okay, it's an okay time to use debt on that type of thing? Or should I only ever, if I'm going to go buy a rental property, only ever pay 100% cash for that? What's the
I think all those things, and we've covered this in the financial order of operations. Remember, moneyguy.com/resources. If you want to download the free 9 steps. that's really post step 7, hyperaccumulation. So when you get to steps 8 and 9, which is prepaid future expenses and then low interest debt prepayment, you can be considering investing in smart ways. I mean, thinking about, buying, it could be second. I don't love secondary homes, by the way, because if you go read Dr. Thomas Stanley's research on Stop Acting Rich, most wealthy people don't actually own secondary homes. But if you're thinking about terms of rental property or commercial property, I mean, you pay attention to the cash flow and then make sure, here's the thing with all debt, make sure when it gets ugly.
That's right. Oh,
I mean, when oxygen leaves the room, you got your cash reserves or your oxygen tank strapped to your back that gets you through the biggest, darkest times that can happen by using debt. Because that's the problem I find. Leverage returns are great. Everybody loves that debt allows you to go borrow money and then turn it into something. And that's when you see rental properties and other things. You're talking about leverage debt and the potential to exponentially increase your return. But there's a huge risk involved with it. So you better make sure you got the pockets to cover it. Because that's why when people talk about buying rental property, and they don't even have cash reserves or they're even maxing out their Roth IRA, I'm like, you're doing it wrong.
You're out of order.
Because, you might get lucky and you're in an appreciating market like we are now where you can do no wrong. But if the oxygen ever gets sucked out of the room, you're going to be caught skinny dipping. Everybody's going to know you're swimming naked and it's going to be ugly.
Love it.